Well, good evening. I'm Larry Souter, and welcome to Stories of Amazing Grace. We're coming to you from Bixler Chapel at the Madison Church of Christ in Madison, Tennessee. Some of you are watching on YouTube, through the internet on praiseandharmony.tv. Thank you for joining us. And we invite you, if you're watching on the internet and like to be a part of our live audience, we meet here on the first Wednesday of each month at 6:30 right here in Bixler Chapel at the Madison Church of Christ. We'd love to have you come and visit us. Our theme scripture always comes from Romans 8:38 through 39, from the Message. I am absolutely convinced that nothing living or dead, angelic or demonic, today or tomorrow, high or low, thinkable or unthinkable, absolutely nothing can get between us and God's love because of the way that Jesus, our Master, has embraced us. Guest tonight is Phillip and Jennifer Anglin. Jennifer was here a year ago. Remember what she spoke on? Adoption, yes. She found her birth mother. So very glad about that. And since then, she has some books out. One is called The Gift of a Lifetime. I assume this is about adoption. And Fun Thoughts on Life. Learning that you're enough, and I am enough, right? And you're enough too. Okay, great. Well, tonight we're going to talk about COVID-19. That has affected Jennifer greatly this past month or two, and she's going to share some adventures that she said she had in heaven. Were they near-death experiences? Was it a vision? Was it a dream? Was it hallucination? Maybe all four, I don't know, or maybe one of those. In her words, some people will believe her experience, some won't, but her purpose is to tell it because there is nothing to fear in death. Experiences like Jennifer must be evaluated in the light of Scripture. God can communicate to us in various ways, through visions, through dreams. That's not typical, I don't think, today, at least in this country. More so, perhaps, in other countries where the Bible is not as prevalent, but still, God can do that. The Bible encourages us to think about the brevity of life. In Psalms 90:10 it says, our days may come to 70 years or 80, if our strength endures, 80 that is. Yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away. And in verse 12 it says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. So we need to think about the brevity of life, but we also need to think about that Jesus is preparing a place after our life here in heaven. And we have glimpses of heaven in the Bible. Most of them come from Revelation, or many come from Revelation. And we may get a glimpse tonight about what heaven is going to be like. But before we meet Jennifer in person, let's watch this video.
Hello, friends. It's Jennifer Anglin reporting live with your weather report. It is a chilly 47 degrees, but I will tell you that spring is sprunging, or spring is springing, or has sprung, or will spring. One of those. The days are getting longer, and we are getting more and more excited because we know that we are just about done with all this COVID mess because we now have the vaccine, which is wonderful. You know what? I am 100% recovered from COVID. And you have a 100% chance of meeting someone who made a trip to heaven while they were indeed diagnosed with COVID. Singing in the bathtub, happy once again. Oh, hi. If you are tuning in today for the weather report and the trip to heaven, I'm going to tell you that the trip to heaven weather is going to be impeccable. Absolute perfection. And I want you to know that that trip to heaven took place in this bathtub right here. I'll catch you soon. Check it out. You're going to love it.
Jennifer Anglin and Phillip Anglin, thank you for being with us.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You always take a bath with your clothes on, I guess.
Always.
Always, yeah.
And my turban.
Yes. Well, we're here to talk about a couple things, COVID and your adventures in heaven. Let's talk about COVID first.
Okay.
When did this start? Was it a slow process, or did you just, it came real quick, or what happened?
On December 23rd, I thought that I had runny nose from the same kind of runny nose I get when pollen is out. And so I took a Sudafed and felt better.
Yeah?
That was actually when I had it. So, like all people do, we proceeded to get together with our family for Christmas and had a great time. And then Christmas night and through the end of January, I have very spotty remembrance.
This is the December 28th, I understand, when you first became sick. You look a little sickly there.
That was right before I went to the hospital the first time.
Okay.
So I was still having a fever then. I would not be sitting here and alive today if it were not for this man. He's the real hero. He paid attention to my every groan, my every, my temperature, what I was eating. He made me drink electrolytes when I didn't want to. And I wouldn't be alive if it weren't for him. And if you have never heard your mother thank your husband for keeping her daughter alive, it's a pretty moving experience.
The next one here is in the hospital. This occurred January 2nd.
This was my first time in the hospital. And it still kind of bothers me to look at this stuff. Yeah.
And the next shot here is some goals that you had on the wall. What is this?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Okay, so this is on the television. They've got a really big TV in your room, and they've got this stuff over on the side. And apparently my pain level was 5 out of 10, and these are my goals. I was supposed to call the nurse for assistance, breathe better, and I was supposed to provide emotional support. So I guess I was supposed to go room to room and greet the public and, how can I help you today?
Somewhat difficult. Yeah.
That's right. So, but on the subject of the emotional support, it is an extremely humbling experience to hear people coughing on either side of you, rooms on either side of your room, and then the coughing to stop.
Wow.
And both people on both sides of me passed away while I was in the hospital in the COVID unit. And then that first picture that I had trouble saying anything about, looking at it, it was the only thing that I could squeak out at that point. I felt so horrible that I thought I was going to die. And all I could squeak out was, I am weak and you are strong. And then from the other side, the lady that was coughing on the other side, I heard ever so faintly, Jesus, keep us from all harm. So I really feel like that was a message from God on my television, that I was there to provide emotional support. I joke about it, yes, but I do believe that I was there for emotional support.
And Phillip, you were there for emotional support too, I assume.
I was,
Not in the hospital.
but not in the hospital.
Did you get COVID as well?
I had COVID last July, but it was mild.
Okay.
I didn't have too many symptoms in just a few days, and I recovered. But I'll tell you what was the worst thing, was taking Jennifer to the hospital. There's nothing worse than going to the hospital and pulling up to the emergency room, and I had to take her in a wheelchair because she couldn't, she was, just practically unconscious, and took her in and say what you have to say to get somebody checked in. They wheel them off, and then I didn't get to see her again. That's what's hard, is leaving your loved one behind and can't be there with them. That's what was the worst part of it for me.
And did you get to visit her at any time?
No,
No.
not until she was released, and I went and picked her up. They brought her down in a wheelchair, and I took her home.
So no family members got to
None.
come in?
None.
Is that right?
But my family would bring me treats. And they figured out that they could drop stuff off at the emergency room and I could send my nurse down to get it. So I had ices and snacks and pretty much anything that I needed. Clothes, yeah, he would bring me clothes because one of the problems is that you may not think about is that when people go to the hospital with COVID, go to the emergency room, and they're taken off and nobody can go with them. And I literally had the clothes on my back and they were not pretty clothes. So you're going in there with nothing, no toothbrush, no nothing.
You didn't dress up to go to the hospital. You weren't ready.
I couldn't have dressed myself if I had wanted to, but no, I did not.
And then you had the battles of the night sweats or the COVID sweats.
Oh, yeah.
And everything was wet all the time.
Wow.
Every time. Now, I slept a lot, but the COVID sweats are terrible. Like, no middle-aged sweating night sweats you've ever had. This is like 10 times worse than that. He had to change our sheets every day.
Well, yeah, while you're at home, yeah.
Wow. The next shot here is a monitor.
My heart rate was 144 that day. The reason I took these pictures is because I thought I was going to die, and I created a journal and photos for my children to understand what happened to me because nobody was there with me, and I knew I was going to die. So I needed to leave my legacy for my children.
You really thought you were going to die?
Yeah. God told me I wasn't, but yes, I did. We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. And we have a shot of Phillip out the door. Now, what is he doing here? Looking at the bill from the hospital?
I took this, and I love this picture. This was the second time we went to the emergency room. Basically, they sent me home. I went home for a few days and was crashing and dying, and so he took me back to the hospital. And
she fought me, too. She didn't want to go.
I begged him not to leave me there again. And I'm sure that was gut-wrenching for him. We're getting ready to have our 30th anniversary, so, we've got a long line of love that we come from, and I didn't want him to leave me there again. And I was so upset I made him test me again. Let me walk around this emergency room again. I promise my blood pressure's not going to drop and my oxygen levels will stay stable. And they tanked worse than they did the first time I walked. So this was Phillip wringing his hands as he knew he was going to drop me off and they were going to keep me. And I guess he's looking to see how tall he is, maybe.
That's exactly right.
This next shot here is a shot of a good lung. This is what lungs should look like,
right?
Correct? Now let's see your lung.
Bam. The doctor told me that a COVID lung looks like shattered glass. And a lot of people, of course, we don't know what the side effects, the effects going forward are going to be because we're all new to this. But they said that some people who had it like a year ago now, when it first came out, that they still do not have any better lungs than this. And I didn't send one of a smoker's lung, but my doctor told me that COVID lung looks worse than a smoker's lung who has smoked their entire life. And it basically makes your lungs into shattered glass. And that COVID virus sticks your lungs together. So when you can't take a deep breath at all. It's horrible.
Have you had an x-ray since? Let's see what it looked like.
I've got to go do that.
Okay. Well, hopefully it's better than this.
Right.
Surely it will be.
Be interesting to see.
We have a quote here. Tell me about this. If a tiny virus can do so much damage to the entire world, imagine what faith of a mustard seed can do.
I personally think that's a mic drop. I don't think there's anything I can say more than that. But if that tiny little virus can wreak havoc on a healthy young body, then what can that faith of a mustard seed do?
And little comedy, brushing your teeth. Tell us how you brush your teeth in the hospital. This is a vomit pan, correct?
It's actually a vomit bean.
A vomit bean.
Yes. Yes, and these come free with your hospital visit.
No charge for this.
Right.
We haven't started receiving the bills from our vomit bean yet. But I'm pretty obsessed with my teeth. It's kind of my thing. I like clean teeth. It's just my thing. And I literally was too weak to pick up a toothbrush. But it is true. And I specifically remember one time laying on the couch, and I don't know if he was trying to get me to hold a drink or something, and I kept saying my arms are just too heavy. And I literally, like, to exist was too heavy. I could not do anything for myself. He was having to feed me. So when I was in the hospital, I was like, great, what am I going to do now? I need to brush my teeth, because he had been doing all of this. And this is called vomit bean teeth brushing. And this is what you do when you're too weak to brush your teeth, and your nurse will bring you water from the sink in your vomit bean, and then you can dip your toothbrush in there, and then you can brush your teeth. And you know, nurses are amazing. And one of my favorite movies is Hacksaw Ridge, and I watched Desmond Dawes, Lord, just give me one more. And I watched those military guys climbing up that rope ladder, and knowing that they are going into the face of the enemy over that. And I have a new appreciation for nurses and doctors, because they are going up Hacksaw Ridge every single day, knowing what they're going into to take care of people that have got the most contagious disease on the planet. And I never felt like a leper. They never withheld care from me. They never withheld the human touch from me. Knowing that my family was at home and could not take care of me, these nurses did it for me. They did everything. And it was so poignant to me for them not to treat me like a leper. I think about Bible times and how the village people felt when these lepers, they'd put them away, we read in the Bible. Right. And I just think I felt like a leper, but I was never treated as one.
They're heroes for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about your adventures in heaven.
Yes.
Tell me, Phillip, when did you get wind that something was happening with your wife here concerning a vision of heaven or being there or whatever it was?
Jennifer ran a fever for, I want to say, a good 5 days. And I spent 5 days trying to break that fever. Tried everything, from the Tylenol to Advil to whatever drugs I could put in her, and find out later, you can get sickness from taking too much Advil. It messes up your liver or whatever. So had to be cautious with that. But we fought that for 5 days. And somebody told me on the 5th day, this was on a Friday, this is before we went to the hospital the first time. Somebody told me to get some Vicks vapor bath and put her in vapor bath, and that would break the fever. Okay, so I went to the store and got the vapor bath and filled up the bathtub and poured all of it in. I put the whole thing in there, trying to make it good for her. And she, of course, couldn't walk very well or get around very well, so I had to really maneuver her to the bathtub. And
I'm not a lightweight.
No. So
He agreed awful quick with that, didn't he?
He did.
well, we'll talk about that. But when she was in the bathtub and she was in the steam bath, I happened to walk in and I saw her bowing to the Lord, saying, who was, who is, and is to come.
Holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come.
And
Over and over, like a mantra.
She was in some kind of, for the lack of better words, a trance. And she was bowing, like to the wall, just bowing and saying this over and over and over. And I was standing off to the side watching this, just kind of in this moment thinking, where is she? Because she's not here. She's doing something that I've never seen before. And I couldn't get her attention. I couldn't snap her out of it. She just continued doing this for 5 or 6 minutes. And I finally got her attention and was able to get her out of the bathtub, and she was completely limp white. And she said something to me, and she said she was going to faint. I said, don't faint, because I don't want to hurt my back again. So I manhandled her and got her to the bed, and she just fell face forward on the bed, buck naked. And
I was adorable.
she was adorable. And so for, I guess, privacy, I laid a towel over her, and she stayed in this state of wherever she was 10 more minutes. I'm sitting on the bed just kind of trying to figure out what I need to do. And she finally kind of came to, and where am I? Why am I naked on the bed? And I can't explain it. She was in a whole different place. But the bowing, I don't think you made this up. I really think she was in some other alternative place doing that.
And I am perfectly capable of making some stuff up.
Yeah.
But this is not one of them.
Were you dead? Did you die?
I don't think so. I don't know for sure, but when he was going to hell and back, and I was frolicking through the 7 levels of the candy cane forest because it was really fun. There were 3 angels that came and got me out of the bathtub, the one you saw in the video.
Let's take a look at that picture. You had a chalk drawing of this.
These are the 3 ladies that came to get me. I have ability to paint and draw, and so the only way that I could convey to you or him or you or you or you or you is if I were to paint and draw what I saw, the best of my ability. So these are the 3 ladies that came and got me out of the bathtub. This is just what they looked like exactly. I did this with chalks, and if anything was different, what they actually looked like than this, they were a little more feathery. And the feathery is heavenly form. I went to heaven in human form, and everybody there was in heavenly form, and everybody was feathery like that. But you knew who they were, even though they no longer looked like they did, because I saw people I knew. I've been able to talk to some people that I saw their people there and didn't know who they were. When people started asking, people found out about my story, and they would ask me, you know, were there animals in heaven? Are there this or that? And there's a lot of things that I saw there that I haven't just physically said out of my mouth, but a lot of people can ask me questions, and I can tell them what I saw to answer their questions about what was there. But these are the 3 ladies that came. Only this one spoke. And these 2 were there as guidance. They just flew there with this other one. And they were all girls. But that one, I said to her that I didn't. She said, God sent me to come and get you. And I said, I don't want to go. My family needs me. And I said, my parents would grieve themselves to death if I went to heaven. And I said, I want to stay here. And she said, you're just going to visit. God sent me here. You're just going to visit, and then you're going to come back. And I said, well, okay, I'll go visit. But I don't want to stay right now. And she said, come on. And so flying is so fun. So fun. But there's 2 modes of transportation in heaven. You can either fly or you can walk. And there's only 2 kinds of people there. There's either vibrant adults, so when you die as an old person or you have some sort of different ability than I do, then when you're in heaven, you become a vibrant adult. That's all the believers. And then the other form that people have in heaven is there's a garden of children. And all of the children, all the aborted babies, all of the babies that were stillborn, all of the children who died for some reason or another, people from other countries who have never heard the sweet name of Jesus, they are in the garden of children. Because it's not a physical children as much as it is a spiritual children. If you are a spiritual child, then you're in this garden of children. And I saw Jesus there. If you want to flip to heaven, I'll show them.
What do you say to those who say you had a fever and you were dreaming this?
Well, I did. I did have a fever.
Okay. Did that affect what?
Do you want me to tell them what God said to me yet?
Sure.
Or, okay. Well, he told me that he brought me here to visit because he knew that I would go back to earth and use my God-given gifts. He said, I gave you the gift of writing and of speaking, and I know you'll go back and tell people whether they believe you or not. And he was right about that.
So was it a vision or were you actually in heaven?
Oh, I was totally there. And if you look at that against what he said and saw, of what he saw in the bathtub.
She wasn't here. Not here. She was gone somewhere.
How does that correlate with the Bible when it says no man has gone to heaven and returned?
That's an excellent question. But what I can say to that is I know what I saw. I know my truth. And I know what God told me to do. He told me that I was not going to die from this, but that I was there to teach other people in the hospital by the way that I am. And then he didn't tell me how I was going to get this word out to other people. But he specifically told me that he knew that I would come back and not care if anybody believed me, I was going to tell it anyway.
This is a verbal conversation?
Yes. Yes. I met God, and I know what he looks like.
No possibility that this could be just a hallucination?
Oh, and God said, for those people who will not believe you, because of not having any science, he said, I threw in a splash of science. And he said, your temperature is 106 degrees and your oxygen level is 62. And he said, for people that need some science, there's some science for them.
And that's what it was?
So technically, I was dead. I mean, by any doctor's statistics, I was dead.
What view did you have on others before this event who have talked about near-death experiences? Did you believe it or not believe it?
I totally believe it.
Perhaps you've read or heard
I
stories
totally
about.
believe it, yeah. I've read a lot of books about it, different people's accounts, and I've watched videos of, totally believe it. Yes. But I'm a charismatic thinker. Some people are naysayers. I am not a naysayer.
What reaction have you gotten from friends and church members about their experience?
Most of it's been positive because people that know me, they believe me. The people that I've talked to that actually know me, they have believed me. And you know, it doesn't. I'm here to tell you what happened to me,
right.
And whether you believe it or not is up to you. It's almost like if you want to give some money to the guy that's standing on the street corner, you've done what you were led to do. Whether they go buy beer and drugs with it or not is on them. So I'm here to tell you what I saw and to provide some encouragement for you and to overcome some fears that you might have of dying. And even if you don't believe anything that I say today, the Holy Spirit is here. Even if you do not believe anything that I say here today, if it builds your faith just one tiny little bit, or you think, well, I'm really comforted to know that the baby that I lost years ago is in the garden of children and that Jesus is there with him, and that gives you some kind of comfort, then I've done what I needed to do for God.
Did you see people that you had no knowledge of or had not seen physically on earth?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
They came to my home. One time that I was on the bed, and I looked over at him and said, there's people everywhere in this room. And I had a really high fever. He had an ice pack on my head, was trying to get the fever down, could barely sit up, and I said, the room is full. And my grandmother, who I've never met, came and sat next to me on the bed, and she told me how special I was and that she had watched me grow up. It's my mother's mother. And she had watched me grow up, and she told me that I was very special because I was getting an opportunity to have a disease that will no longer be on the planet. And she said, when our kinfolk, that's what she called them to me, she said, when our kinfolk that come behind you, generations to come, then they will read about what you have done in a history book about COVID. And just like we read about measles, mumps, and rubella, and that doesn't exist anymore because we're all vaccinated against it. Well, somebody had to have it, and some Johnson & Johnson or Merck had to create a vaccine for it, and then the rest of us, generations to come, had to get the vaccine, so we don't have it anymore. But somebody somewhere has had that. And so my grandmother came and told me not to be discouraged, that I was still sick, that I was special because I was able to have this disease that will not exist later on. And I will be able to tell my story of what the disease was like for generations to come. And my grandfather stood over in the corner and didn't say a word. So when I told my mother that I had met my grandparents, who were dead before I was ever born, she said, Daddy never had much to say at all. And she confirmed that what I had said was congruent with what she knew her parents to be.
And you had no knowledge of that before this experience?
She also told me that I needed to tell our family that that picture that our family has got of them that's been printed over and over from an old photo needs to be put away, because that is not my grandfather's real military uniform. And I have since told the family, hey, she does not want that picture out in your house anymore.
Most near-death experiences, they talk about seeing a light. Did you see a light, bright light?
No. And that is, no. A lot of orange.
Why do you think that is? Or do you know?
Well, most people talk about Jesus, and I did see Jesus. I saw him from a distance, and there's a painting that shows where Jesus was when I was there. But when God took me on a tour of heaven and he showed me the Garden of Children, Jesus was in that garden. But most people see Jesus, or they talk about Jesus, but I personally have never heard anybody say, I met God.
I brought up earlier about, could this be a dream? And one of the reasons I did that, this past Monday, I was working on material for this interview tonight, and I got tired and took a nap. But during this nap, around 7 o'clock, I had a dream. And I saw bright light explosions out my second-story window, and I was in bed. I was on the first floor. But this was real to me, what was occurring outside my window. Big, loud bangs and bright light. And I was struggling to get out of bed. I finally woke up and was so glad that it was just a dream. But at the time, it was real. Could this not have been the same situation? It was real, but a dream, and you woke up and looked around and said, oh, I didn't really experience this after all.
I don't think so, because of what he says he saw in real life, earthly life. If you put our stories together and you listen to what he says I was doing at the same time that I was frolicking through the 7 levels of the candy cane forest, then it all matches up.
Did you have any doubts about what you were saying?
I wouldn't say I had doubts, but I didn't at the time understand what I was seeing. Because I didn't know, when she was bowing, because she was bowing at the throne of God. And it didn't occur to me that that's where she was. I thought something else was going on. But she'll tell you a story that she talked to the angels that are bowing, and you can tell you're telling the story.
All right, let's hear that.
I'm actually writing a book about this and putting all this into a book. And this particular chapter of the book is called Tennessee Goes to Heaven. So when those three angels came and got me and we flew to heaven, they took me to the throne of God. And so I went in with them, and everybody was in their heavenly form, very feather-like, very feather-like. And everybody was bowing, and holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come, over and over and over again. And I was doing that too. If you look at what he says on earth, that's what I was doing in the bathtub. So back in heaven, I looked over at them because I went in my human form. So I went like this, and they were already in their heavenly form. And I looked over at them and I said, just like this. And if you know me, you know this is what I said. I said, do y'all ever get tired of saying that over and over and over and over again? And this I call heaven's mic drop. They looked at me and they said, no, because he is worthy.
Interesting.
That, to me, that's heaven's mic drop. There's nothing you can say to that. He is worthy. So no, we don't get tired. And they looked at me like I had a third head. Like, what in the world? Why would you think we'd get tired of doing this? And when I've been a child of God for years and was raised in the church, and, you read the Bible and you read where people are praising. That is something that I've always wondered. Do they ever get tired of saying that over and over? Like we're going to be in heaven to praise? But thinking that they would get tired of that is earthly thinking. They're on a whole nother, they don't think like we do.
Let's take another picture here. This is what you saw that heaven looks like, correct?
Yes, this is what heaven looks like. And everybody that I've ever heard tell about heaven, it's always everything's white and everything's light and everything's green. Everything is green. And I don't mean like Bermuda grass turns brown in the winter. I mean lush green. So I went to the throne of God. Tennessee went to heaven, and then God told me why he brought me there, that he knew that I would go tell it. So he said, I want to give you a tour of heaven. I said, that sounds awesome. So he took me up on this hill, and we stood right here. And he said, this is the kingdom. And over here is the garden of children, and if you see down next,
I see some bodies there.
You can see it better in the real painting, but that little black,
There?
yes, that's Jesus. He was down there, and I said, well, Jesus looks like he's in form of what we see in pictures and whatnot. And he said, Jesus hangs out in the garden of children. And he said that Jesus loves it there, and that's congruent with, Jesus said, let the little children come to me. But they were running around, and it was really impactful to see that. But we were standing right here and looking down on them all playing. And then we had a child that didn't make it between Ben and Claire. And she came running up through here and said, Mommy, Mommy. And She said, I'm fine here. I'm having so much fun. It's so fun here. She said, I'm just here in the garden waiting for you. And so all of these children are waiting for their parents to come. And when their parents come, then they become in their heavenly form. So they're still in human form in the garden of children. But it was kind of down in the valley, like over there. And there was a lot of children in there.
We flip to the next shot here. It's kind of scary. But this is God.
If you don't think I'm crazy yet, you're going to think it now. So this is God. And the interesting thing is I prayed a lot about whether I was going to paint God or not. Because, and I remember telling, before I did this painting, I kept saying, he's not scary. When I was telling him or them about where I had been and what I had done, and for some reason I said, I met God and he's not scary. And I would always say that. I met God and he's not scary. And then I didn't think for a minute that when I put him out of my head onto something, a canvas, that he was going to look scary, but that's awful.
Pretty scary.
Yeah. Like that's like what nobody would think he would look like. But I prayed before I painted, picked up the first anything, and I said, Lord, only let me paint what you would want someone to see. And so,
Did you hear a voice from God?
no, not at this time. Thank you. But if you look at this, I noticed that I literally gave my hands to God and said, only let me paint what you would want somebody to see. Because remember, when I'm telling this, and this is not with my thinking, this is just what comes out of me. It's like I met God and he's not scary. And then when I put him on paper and I realized that he looks kind of scary, and not at all what somebody would think he would look like, but I didn't think that when I went to the throne of God. So he's actually on his throne, and the real picture doesn't look like this anymore because I painted the throne up here. But if you look at this, and I did not do this on purpose, look at the head, the chest, the drape, the hands. You see that? Take this part out and just look at like God standing there. See it? This is the arms coming across the hands. And then this is like the drape like we see in the Bible. And so that really hit me in the side of the head when I painted this with my own hands, but I wasn't trying to paint that like that. But if you take this out, and it almost looks like maybe Mary standing there. I mean, I'm saying it's God, but it looks like a person standing there with their flowy biblical garment kind of thing on there.
Interesting. Scary.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's not scary, though. Trust me.
What does it all mean, this experience? You said it means for you to come back and share about God's love.
Absolutely. And that there's no fear in dying. That we do not, I think maybe I thought that heaven was in outer space. There's no going through the atmosphere. Heaven is like a whole different place. It's not out in space like I thought it might be, or like you may think that it may be. But it's like a whole nother place. In one part of heaven, you can look and you can see people on earth and what they're doing and what's going on. He did tell me, the first thing he said to me when I went to the throne, and this was before Tennessee goes to heaven, He said, tell everybody that they don't need to worry about that election because that is not the way it should have been, and that's a mess. And he said, but it's all going to be okay, because he said, and this has really affected Phillip, he said, everything is irrelevant. It's all earthly mess. And he said, just do what Caesar said and move on. That's what he told me.
Interesting story. Very interesting story.
Like, Eve, why did you eat that apple? Noah, what did you think about when you were building that huge ark? All these questions that we think when we get to heaven, we want to ask so-and-so, whatever. When you get there, that is totally irrelevant. Like, you don't even care anymore why she ate the apple. But everything is happiness. No pain, no illnesses, no nothing.
I want to leave time for questions, which the time is getting away. But I would not be doing my job if I didn't take the other side here and present some contradictory views concerning what you said.
Sure.
So this is in kindness, I'm saying these things. But some Bible pushback here, I think.
Okay.
John 1:18, no one has seen God except Jesus. Exodus 33:20, you cannot see my face and live. John 6:46, no one has seen the Father except the one who is from God. Only he has seen the Father. 1 Timothy 6:16, God lives in unapproachable light, whom no one has seen or can see. Number 2, there are 10 resurrection occasions in the Bible, meaning there may be multiple resurrections during this particular occasion, but there are 10 of those in the Bible. And not one of those did anybody come back and describe heaven. Maybe they did, and it's not recorded, but we have nothing in the Bible about that. But Lazarus was in the grave 4 days. He came back. He had nothing to say about his experience in heaven. So whether that has any impact on this, I don't know. Number 3, no one has gone to heaven and returned. John 3:13, the New Living Translation, no one has ever gone to heaven and returned, but the Son of Man has come down from heaven. Of other people who have went to heaven, but they did not return. Genesis 5:24, Enoch walked with God, then he was no more. He didn't come back. 2 Kings 2:11, Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. As far as we know, he didn't come back. Number 4, the Bible says we die once. It's irreversible. The soul leaves the body. It is not a near death. We die once. Hebrews 9:27 says people are destined to die once. After that, to face judgment. There are visions in the Bible, and maybe what you had was a vision, or maybe not. 2 Corinthians 12, Paul had a vision of heaven. It says whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know. He heard inexpressible things, but was not permitted to tell anything about it. Why? Don't know. Acts 7:55 through 56, Stephen had a vision of Jesus at his death. It says, I see heaven open and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. No more about heaven than that is all he said. So, in my conclusion, I believe that you believe what you saw, for sure.
Right.
For sure. And I believe that God may have provided that dream, let's say a dream, but that's all I can kind of get my mind around, that's what it was. I think it was a dream, perhaps to comfort you and to help you get through COVID-19. That may not be the case at all, but I had to present that as the other side.
Right.
Now, give you a chance to respond to that before we take any questions, if you like.
I'll respond to that. Looking at the book of Revelation, it was revealed to John all of the glory of heaven and what it would look like in his interpretation based on what he saw or the elements that he knew of at the time. He was given those things to think about and to write about. Whether or not this is a vision, a dream, an actual experience, or whatever, she's able to put into words what she saw. And is it right or wrong? I don't know. But if it gives you a little bit more hope, I think that's the wonderful thing. Obviously, the Bible speaks and the Bible is truth. I don't know what this is, but I know what I saw. And that's all I can go with. It gives me a lot of faith. It gives me a lot of faith. I'm not afraid of dying. It doesn't matter because we go to a better place. This is just temporary. And as she said, everything's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much money you have or what kind of house you live in or how many cars you have. None of that matters. It's all irrelevant. Going to heaven. Heaven's going to be a beautiful place.
Questions?
Did you meet any of your biological family that had gone before that you know of?
That's a good question. There were some people that I did not see, but I knew they were there. And I asked God about some of people that I knew specifically. He said, oh, yes. One in particular was his mother. I asked about his mother, and God told me that she was picking colors for sunset that day. And so that was pretty cool.
You also saw the people in our room. You saw my grandparents,
Yes.
who my grandfathers I never met. They were all died. Both of my grandfathers died before I was 2. So she saw them and described them. And when you look at pictures of what we have, it's amazing.
And I had not seen pictures of them.
Interesting. What else?
You said you got together with family at Christmas. Did anybody else get COVID, or were you the only one?
My mother got COVID, and we got it at the same time. And she has some health issues, and I am vibrantly healthy. And I almost died from it, and she had a cough.
How's your sense of smell?
It's fine.
Good?
But my son got it too, our son, and is your smell and taste back yet? Still not back. Mine came back when I was in the hospital. It came back. So I didn't lose that for very long. Oh, and I never had a cough. Never
Didn't have
had a cough.
Really? Even with the glass shattered lung?
Yep,
Wow.
no cough.
Amazing.
Tell them about the auras, the people that you saw with the auras.
Yes, when we were looking down onto Earth, there was an aura around people here and there, I mean, everywhere. And I asked God, I said, what are those auras? And he said, those are praying mothers. And he said, the prayers of mothers are the most powerful prayers of any prayers that are prayed. And he said that most children would never survive their childhood if it were not for praying mothers. And so that aura is their prayers going out for their children. And the power of a praying mother. And I said, but some people's mothers don't pray. And God said that like the children that came, my children's friends that came over to the house, or our neighbor kids, when we're praying for our children, those prayers cover those other children also.
Thank you for sharing. Anything else you want to say? Recap?
I was thinking there was something else about and God also, when I was looking down onto earth and God was telling me what I was seeing and whatnot, and the best way I can describe it in earthly terms is the Vincent van Gogh's painting Starry Night, how the sky is like swirled looking, and there were swirls like that you could see that were kind of moving swirls and God said, almost nothing that happens to you is about you. And he said, watch this. And he took his finger, and he said, this person loses their job, but it's really to show this person who they don't even know what a faithful person will do when...
So it's all connected.
Everything is connected, and he showed me how he does that, and he takes his hand and he like swirls it all around, and none of these people that he's swirling know each other. But he said almost nothing that happens to you is about you, and we think everything is about us, and nothing is about us. It's all about how are we going to get all these people into heaven? That's what everything is about. everything is about getting everybody to heaven.
Did you fear death before this experience?
I think that somebody who would say they don't fear death would,
At least have
I
apprehension.
think everybody has some sort of fear of death.
You drowned once and it was very peaceful, you say.
So peaceful. I drowned when I was 10.
Tell me about that.
Well, Lauren Halsey plucked me out of the pool, and I was going into paradise, and the next thing I know, and she's reviving me. And I mean, a lot of you probably know her. And I remember when I went under the water, I remember it vividly. Went under the water and I thought, oh, I can't breathe underwater. What am I going to do? Nobody's going to see me. Where's my buddy? You know, we always have a buddy check. And I can't even remember who was my buddy that day? Who was that?
Not your buddy now, though, are they?
No. So when I started inhaling the water, it was like the most peace that I've ever experienced. So peaceful. And then the next thing I know, Lauren yanks me up out of the water and onto the thing and starts pumping water out of me. So I lived. I actually think they kept that pretty hush-hush because I don't think people know that I drowned at that camp.
Well, they do now.
They do.
They do now. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And tell me your books again, the titles of the books.
The first book I wrote is called Fun Thoughts on Life, and it is all the things that have happened to me that have taught me that I'm enough in this world, because I think that we all struggle with feeling like you're enough, and even on your worst day when donuts are for dinner, you are still enough. You are enough. So that's the first book, and the second one is my adoption story and the subsequent finding of my birth family. They're on Amazon. You can search my name and they'll come up, or you can get them off my website, www.thejenniferanglin.com, and that is not just any old Jennifer Anglin, the Jennifer Anglin.
There's only one. There's only
Well,
one.
actually, there's another one that goes to my church,
Yeah, but there's only one.
the Jennifer Anglin.
Thank you. Some other books you might enjoy concerning heaven. This is a pretty good one, written by God, the Holy Bible. Heaven by Randy Alcorn is a good book. And Joe Beam, Real Heaven is Not What You Think, is a good one. Thank you for being with us on Stories of Amazing Grace. If you have a story to tell, share it with someone this week. Thank you.